Good morning, good morning. Here we are in Vicky 3 Academy. I'm Walker on We Play Games, and I want to discuss rural folk today. So we just discussed the devout in our previous video, which are like sort of the stand-in for the middle strata in the pre-industrial world. And now we're going to discuss the rural folk, which are sort of, again, like the stand-in for the lower strata in the pre-industrial world. So the rural folk are really interesting in the same way that the Catholic Church or the devout are going to be interesting for you, because they're going to have the ability to push and pull on the landowners themselves. Not that like literally everything has to be about the landowners, but it's important to keep in mind that an overwhelming majority of the countries in the game at game start are going to have a powerful landowner, and so knowing how to interact with them is going to be really helpful for you. And the rural folk are absolutely a way to do that. The rural folk are in fact even more than that. So of course the rural folk, they do have this population modifier down here, and the first thing you'll note whenever you're playing a game is you're like, oh my god, the population is enormous for the rural folk, so they must have a lot of political power. No. And the reason is because of the way political power is generated. So when you get political power, if you're living in an autocracy or, anything that doesn't have votes, the only way to gain political strength is going to be coming out of this from wealth and average wealth modifier. And so if you have a lot of pops, but they're all almost entirely just serfs who make functionally nothing, then your rural folk really won't have a lot of power. If, on the other hand, we were able to switch into a powerful democracy, you would see that these things, rural folk would become amazingly powerful in the event that we were under universal suffrage right now. But that's going to be hard to do, because as I said, these guys are kind of like the lower strata of the pre-industrial world, and so when they're mad, they're going to give you tech spread penalties. When they're happy, they're going to give you rural bonuses of production, especially non-mining, and then a little bit of infrastructure. The infrastructure is sort of like the hidden secret thing about the rural folk. If you can get them to 10 and consistently keep them above 10, then they're going to be actually really helpful whenever you're trying to develop an economy prior to railways. It's not necessary, but I'll just tell you that there are absolutely cases where, like, if you're playing as Japan, you might desperately need some infrastructure, or your cities are just going to be like urban beyond your ability to survive. That's where a happy rural folk helps. Other than that, the rural folk are mostly going to be helpful in a couple other ways in terms of the laws that they support. They oppose peasant levies, which is always a good thing to oppose. Because they're neutral on professional army or national militia, you can count on the rural folk to help you get both of those things through. They also oppose serfdom, so that's also really helpful. They oppose debt slavery, which is kind of like not a big deal in the broader scheme of things. The biggest issue with them in terms of their behavior as an IG is going to come down to these modifiers down here more than anything else. Their laws, their stance on migration is going to hurt you a little bit, but at the end of the day, it's not like the end of the world that they have this isolationist thing. You'll probably find a way to get value out of them, but you're just not going to find a way to keep a lot of them. It's going to be the problem, because they really only attract agricultural employees, peasants, clergymen, farmers. That collection of pops, again, as you develop your economy and as you industrialize your economy, those pops are going to fall away. In the event that you're playing a campaign where you're trying to intentionally remain agricultural, then rural folk are going to be really, really helpful for you, and I would try to figure out a way to combine rural folk and Catholic Church in a way that helps you out. Because again, those are 2/3 of the like truly specifically pre-industrial interest groups, and I think that's it for rural folk. Other than that, there aren't a whole lot of truly astonishing things about them. They're pretty happy to deal with basically anything. Also, they don't like land-based taxation either. Of course, that makes sense, because land-based taxation is largely going to be aimed at peasants, but that's going to be helpful for you because you don't really want to stay in land-based taxation anyway. You'd rather be in per capita taxation. It's a much, much stronger taxation law. All right, that's rural folk and IGs here on Vicky 3 Academy. I'm Walker. Like and subscribe. I almost never say that because I always forget, but I remembered this time. So go ahead and do that.